The courtroom was quiet, but not calm. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like something important was about to happen. People sat in their seats, waiting. Some whispered to each other. Others simply watched. At the center of it all, she stood. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it by holding them together, but it didn't work. Her fingers trembled slightly, and her heart beat fast in her chest. It felt too loud, like everyone around her could hear it. She took a small breath. Then another. But it didn't help. Across the room, her ex-boyfriend stood confidently. He looked relaxed, comfortable, even happy. There was a small smile on his face, like he was enjoying the moment, like he had already won. His lawyer stood beside him, speaking quietly, going over something one last time. He nodded as if everything was under control, as if nothing could go wrong. And maybe that was what hurt the most. The way he looked at her, not with guilt, not with regret, but with quiet confidence, like she was already defeated, like she was nothing. Her chest tightened. For a moment, doubt tried to rise inside her. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she shouldn't have come this far. Maybe. No, she whispered softly to herself. She had come too far to turn back now. This wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It wasn't just about the lies. It was about everything he had done after that. The way he twisted the truth. The way he tried to destroy her name. The way he made her look like the problem. She swallowed slowly and lifted her head. Her eyes met his. He smiled again. Slow, confident, mocking. He leaned slightly toward his lawyer and said something that made them both chuckle quietly. That was when the door opened. It wasn't loud, just a simple movement. But somehow, everyone noticed. The room changed. The air shifted. Conversation stopped. Even the judge looked up. A man walked in. Calm, steady, controlled. He didn't rush. He didn't look around nervously like most people would in a courtroom. He walked like he already owned the space. His suit was simple but perfect. His face was expressionless, cold, unreadable. And yet, there was something about him that made people pay attention without trying. Power. Not loud power. Not force. But quiet, dangerous control. The kind that didn't need to prove itself. As he walked forward, the room remained silent. Even the guards straightened slightly. Even the lawyers stopped talking. It was as if everyone understood something without being told. This man was not ordinary. She felt her breathing slow down. For the first time since she entered the courtroom, she wasn't afraid. He walked past the rows of seats without looking at anyone. Then he stopped beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence. Strong, steady, real. Her ex saw him. And everything changed. The smile on his face disappeared instantly. His eyes widened slightly, like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. Then recognition hit him. Hard. His body stiffened. He leaned forward, his voice lower now, no longer confident. You brought him? There was disbelief in his voice. And something else. Fear. Real fear. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. This time, she wasn't shaking. Her voice was quiet, but steady, clear. You should have thought of that before you cheated and lied. The words were simple, but they landed heavy. Her ex didn't respond immediately. For the first time since this whole thing started. He had no words. His lawyer looked confused, then uneasy. He leaned toward him quickly, whispering questions. But her ex didn't answer. He was still staring at the man standing beside her. The man who hadn't said a single word. The man whose presence alone had already changed everything. The judge cleared his throat, trying to bring the room back to order, but the tension remained. Everyone felt it. Something had shifted. Something serious. The case was no longer simple. It was no longer predictable. And deep down, everyone knew it. She stood a little straighter. Her hands were no longer shaking. Her heart was still beating fast. But now it wasn't fear. It was something else. Strength. Control. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone. She didn't look at her ex again. She didn't need to, because she had already seen it. The moment everything changed. The moment his confidence broke. The moment he realized This wasn't going to go the way he planned. That was the moment my ex realized. He didn't just lose me. He started a war he couldn't win. Before everything went wrong, she loved him with her whole heart. Not halfway, not carefully, but fully and without fear. His name was Daniel, and when she first met him, he was nothing like the confident man standing in that courtroom. Back then, he was struggling. He didn't have much. His clothes were simple, sometimes even worn out. His dreams were big, but his life didn't match them yet. She saw something in him, something others ignored, and she believed in it. At that time, her life was more stable. She had a decent job, a small but comfortable apartment, and a steady income. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. And she shared it with him. When he couldn't pay his rent, she helped. When he didn't have food, she made sure he ate. When he felt like giving up, she sat beside him and reminded him of his dreams. "You'll get there," she would say softly. "I believe in you." And she meant it. She didn't keep count of what she gave. She didn't expect anything in return. To her, love was support. Love was standing by someone, even when things were hard. Daniel used to look at her like she was everything. He would hold her hands and say, "I'll never forget this. I'll make you proud one day." She smiled every time, because she trusted him. Months passed. Things started changing. Slowly at first. He got a better job, started making money, met new people. His confidence grew, but something else changed too. His attention. He stopped calling as much, stopped coming over like before. When she asked, he always had an excuse. "I'm busy. Work is stressful. You worry too much." At first, she believed him. She didn't want to doubt him. But something didn't feel right. Then one night, everything broke. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had gone to surprise him. She thought maybe they could spend time together, like before. She even bought food, his favorite. She stood outside his apartment door, smiling slightly, ready to knock. But the door wasn't fully closed. She heard laughter. A woman's laughter. Her smile faded. Slowly, she pushed the door open. And there he was, Daniel, with another woman. Close. Too close. Her heart dropped. The food slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft sound. Both of them turned. For a second, no one spoke. Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, it's not what you think." But she already knew. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She just looked at him. The man she had trusted. The man she had supported. The man she had loved. And quietly she walked away. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because Daniel didn't just cheat. He went further. Days later, she started noticing changes. People at work looked at her differently. Whispers followed her. Her boss called her in one morning. "There's been a complaint," he said carefully. Her heart tightened. "What kind of complaint?" He hesitated. "About your behavior, your character, your integrity." She felt like the ground shifted under her feet. None of it was true, but the damage had already started. Then she found out. Daniel. He had been talking, telling people she was controlling, that she used him, that she was unstable. Even worse, he twisted the story, made it seem like she was the one who betrayed him. She couldn't believe it. "How can he do this?" she whispered to herself one night, sitting alone in her apartment. The same apartment where he used to laugh with her. Now it felt empty, cold. The messages didn't stop. Anonymous texts, rumors, people she didn't even know judging her. Her name was being dragged through the mud. And Daniel? He was fine, living freely, smiling, moving on like nothing happened, like she meant nothing. That was when she realized something painful. This wasn't just betrayal. This was destruction. He wasn't just trying to leave her. He was trying to ruin her. For a few days, she broke. She cried. She questioned herself. She wondered if she had made a mistake loving him. But slowly, something changed. The tears stopped. The confusion faded. And, in its place, came clarity. She stood in front of her mirror one morning, looking at her tired face. And she said quietly, "This ends now." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Because deep down she understood something important. She didn't deserve this. Not after everything she had done. Not after everything she had given. Daniel thought he could lie, manipulate, destroy her name, and walk away without consequences. But he was wrong. Very wrong. Because the woman he betrayed was no longer the same woman who trusted him blindly. She had seen the truth now. And she wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Everyone in the firm knew his name. Not because he spoke often. Not because he tried to be noticed. But because of what people said about him. He was the kind of man people talked about in low voices. The kind of man no one wanted to disappoint. His name was Adrian Cole. A top lawyer. One of the best. Some said he had never lost a serious case. Others said he didn't take cases unless he was already sure he would win. But what made people respect him wasn't just his skill. It was how he worked. Cold. Precise. Controlled. He didn't shout in meetings. He didn't waste words. When he spoke, it was simple and final. Do it. Fix it. Prepare it again. No emotions. No explanations. And somehow, everyone obeyed. Even senior lawyers. Even people older than him. Because behind that calm silence was power. Real power. Not just in the courtroom, but outside it. He had connections. Strong ones. People with influence. People who didn't appear in public. People who could change things quietly. No one talked about it openly, but everyone knew. If Adrian Cole took your case, you either won, or you disappeared from the fight completely. She worked under him. Not directly at first. She was just a junior staff member in the firm, handling files, preparing documents, following instructions, staying quiet, doing her job. After everything that had happened with Daniel, work became her only focus. She needed something steady, something that didn't involve emotions. And the firm gave her that. Or, at least, that was what she thought. Until she started noticing him. Adrian Cole didn't move like other people. He walked through the office like he didn't need to look around. Like he already knew everything. Every detail. Every mistake. Every person. Sometimes, he would pass by her desk without saying a word. Just a brief glance. Then gone. But those small moments stayed with her. There was something about his eyes. Sharp. Observant. Like nothing escaped them. At first she avoided him. She kept her head down. Did her work carefully. Made sure there were no errors. Because she had heard the stories. People who made mistakes around him didn't last long. Not because he fired them loudly, but because they simply disappeared from his team. Quietly. Professionally. Completely. One afternoon, she made a small error in a document. Nothing serious. Just a minor detail. She fixed it quickly and hoped no one noticed. But later that day, she was called into a meeting room. Her heart started beating faster. When she entered, he was there. Sitting. Calm. A file open in front of him. He didn't look up immediately. He turned a page slowly. Then finally, his eyes lifted to meet hers. She felt it instantly. That pressure. That silence. Sit, he said. His voice was low. Controlled. She sat. Carefully. He didn't speak for a few seconds. Then he pushed the document slightly forward. You corrected it, he said. She nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Another pause. You noticed your mistake. Yes. He leaned back slightly, still watching her. Good. That was all. No anger. No lecture. Just one word. But somehow, it felt heavier than a full conversation. She left the room confused, relieved but uneasy, because it felt like something more had happened. Something she didn't fully understand. Days passed. Then weeks. Work continued. But her situation outside work didn't improve. The rumors were still there. The whispers. The judgment. Even at the office, some people looked at her differently now. She tried to ignore it. But it wasn't easy. One day, she overheard two colleagues talking. She's the one, right? The one with that scandal? I heard it was bad. She kept walking. Like she didn't hear anything. But inside, it hurt. What she didn't know was this. He had already heard. Adrian Cole noticed everything. The looks. The whispers. The tension around her. He saw how her work remained perfect, even when her world outside was falling apart. He saw how she stayed quiet, didn't argue, didn't defend herself, just worked, focused, disciplined. One evening, after most people had left, he stood in his office, looking through a file. Not a legal case, but something else. Information, details, connected to her. And one name stood out. Daniel. He didn't react, didn't say anything. He simply closed the file slowly, placed it on his desk, and looked out the window. His face remained calm, unchanged, but his mind was working, calculating, observing. He wasn't a man who acted quickly. He didn't interfere without reason. He didn't involve himself in things that didn't concern him. But this was different. Not because of her. Not yet. But because of what he was starting to see. Still, he did nothing. No confrontation. No questions. No action. Not yet. He simply watched. And when a man like Adrian Cole watched, it meant something was coming. Something quiet. Something controlled. Something that didn't need noise to be dangerous. At first, she thought the worst was over. The cheating, the lies, the whispers. She believed that once she walked away, Daniel would move on and leave her alone. But she was wrong. Very wrong. One morning, she arrived at work like every other day. Calm. Focused. Determined to ignore everything outside her control. She placed her bag on her desk, turned on her computer, and opened her files. Then her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Her heart tightened slightly as she opened it. You think you can just walk away? We're not done. Her fingers froze. She knew who it was. Daniel. Before she could respond, another message came in. Check your email. Her chest felt heavy as she slowly opened her inbox. There it was. A legal notice. Her breath caught in her throat. She read it once. Then again. And again. Her hands started shaking. It was a claim. Daniel was accusing her, saying she owed him money. A large amount. Money she had never taken. Money that didn't make sense. He had twisted everything. The help she gave him. The support. The things she paid for willingly. He turned it into a debt. A legal debt. She leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. This can't be real, she whispered. But it was. He wasn't just lying anymore. He was attacking her legally, trying to trap her, trying to break her completely. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt it again. That same feeling. Fear. The kind that makes your thoughts unclear. The kind that makes you want to run. She stood up quickly and walked to the restroom. She locked herself inside a stall and leaned against the door. Her breathing became uneven. Her eyes filled with tears. Why is he doing this? She whispered. She had already lost enough. Why wasn't it enough for him? Why did he need to destroy her completely? Her shoulders shook as the tears finally fell. For a few minutes, she let it happen. She cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone who was tired, deeply tired. But then, something changed. She wiped her face slowly, took a deep breath, then another. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror when she stepped out. Her eyes were red, her face tired, but there was something else there too. Something stronger. This wasn't just pain anymore. It was anger. Not loud anger. Not reckless anger. But something controlled. Clear. Steady. She stared at herself for a few seconds, then said quietly, "No more." Her voice didn't shake this time. She walked out of the restroom differently. Her steps were firm. Her mind focused. She didn't go back to her desk. Instead, she walked down the hallway, past offices, past people, straight to one place. His office. Adrian Cole. The door was closed. She paused for a second. Her heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to do. Then she knocked. "Come in." His voice was calm as always. She opened the door and stepped inside. He was at his desk, working, focused. He didn't look up immediately, just like before. "Sit," he said. She sat down. Her hands rested on her lap. This time, They weren't shaking. He finished reading the document in front of him, closed it, then finally looked at her. His eyes were sharp, observant. He noticed everything. The red in her eyes, the tension in her face. But he didn't ask. He waited, silently. She swallowed slowly, then spoke. My ex filed a claim against me. No emotion in her voice, just truth. He didn't react. Amount, he asked. She told him. His expression didn't change. Basis, he continued. He's saying I owe him for financial support. A small pause. The room felt still. Then she reached into her bag and placed the printed documents on his desk. I didn't take anything from him, she added quietly. I gave him everything. Another silence. He glanced at the papers. Just once. That was enough. He understood. Of course he did. Then his eyes returned to her. And, for the first time, she spoke from somewhere deeper. Not pain, not fear, but decision. I don't want pity, she said. Her voice was steady, clear, strong. I want justice. The words stayed in the air. Heavy, real. Adrian Cole looked at her for a moment. Longer than usual, as if measuring something. Not her situation, but her. Then slowly, he leaned back in his chair. His expression didn't soften, didn't change, but something shifted, very slightly. Good, he said. A small pause followed. Then, because I don't do pity. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was calm, controlled, decided. Because, in that moment, something had begun. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. She had stopped being the victim. And Adrian Cole had just made a decision. Daniel didn't know it yet, but he had made a very dangerous mistake. The moment she left Adrian Cole's office, everything changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that felt controlled, calculated, like something had already been set in motion. The next morning, she was called into a different office. Not the usual meeting room. This one was smaller, private, quiet. When she walked in, 3 people were already there. Not regular staff. These were senior members of the firm. Focused. Serious. One of them nodded at her. Sit. She did. A file was placed in front of her. Thick. Organized. Precise. Her name was on it. And Daniel's. Her chest tightened slightly, but she stayed calm. This is your case now, the woman across from her said. Under Mr. Cole's instruction. She didn't speak. She just listened. We're going to go through everything, another man added. Every transaction. Every message. Every claim he's made. She nodded slowly. Good, the woman said. Because this isn't just defense anymore. A small pause. It's exposure. The words settled in her mind. Exposure. They weren't just going to prove she was innocent. They were going to show the truth. All of it. That was when the work began. Days turned into long hours. Files. Records. Statements. Every detail of her past with Daniel was brought forward. At first, it felt overwhelming. Painful, even. Old messages. Old memories. Moments she had tried to forget. Now laid out clearly on paper. But this time, they weren't emotional. They were evidence. Look at this, one of the analysts said, pointing at a screen. A series of bank transactions appeared. Her account. Then Daniel's. Dates matched. Amounts clear. This shows you were supporting him, he explained. Consistently. She leaned closer. Her eyes moved slowly across the numbers. Rent payments. Transfers. Expenses. All from her. Nothing from him. Another document followed. Messages. Printed. Organized by date. Read this part, the woman said. She did. Daniel's words filled the page. Requests. Excuses. Promises. All written clearly. I'll pay you back. I just need time. You know I'm trying. Her hands tightened slightly. She remembered those messages. How she believed them. How she trusted him. But now, they weren't memories. They were proof. Everything he's claiming, the woman continued. We're going to break it down piece by piece. And they did. Carefully. Methodically. No rushing. No guessing. Every step planned. Then came something else. Unexpected. Witnesses, the man said. She looked up. We've contacted people who knew both of you, he explained. Friends. Neighbors. Colleagues. Her heart beat slightly faster. What did they say? She asked. The woman gave a small, calm look. They confirmed your story. A pause. And contradicted his. Relief passed through her slowly. But she didn't smile. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. Meanwhile, Daniel started to feel it. At first it was small. A call from his lawyer. Something's off, the lawyer said. What do you mean? Daniel asked. They're not responding like normal. Daniel frowned. What's that supposed to mean? A pause. Then, they're building something. That was the first sign. Then came the requests. Formal. Clear. Detailed. Financial records. Communication history. Access to documents. More than usual. More than necessary. Daniel started getting uncomfortable. This is too much, he said during one call. His lawyer sounded less confident now. It's standard but also not. What does that mean? Another pause. Then, it means this isn't a simple case anymore. Daniel's jaw tightened. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. It was supposed to be easy. A simple claim. Pressure her. Force her to settle. Win quickly. That was the plan. But now, something felt wrong. Very wrong. Days later, he sat in his apartment, going through his own records, trying to understand, trying to stay ahead. But the more he looked, the more he realized something. They weren't just defending her. They were digging. Deep. And carefully. Like they already knew where to look. His phone rang again. His lawyer. This isn't normal, he said this time. Daniel stayed silent. They have too much, the lawyer continued. Documents. Patterns. Witnesses. A heavy pause followed. Then, I need you to tell me everything. Daniel's chest tightened. Everything, he asked slowly. Yes, the lawyer said firmly. Because, right now, it feels like they know more than we do. Silence filled the room. Daniel didn't respond immediately. For the first time since all of this began, he wasn't in control. And he could feel it, clearly, deep in his chest. Something had shifted. Something serious. This wasn't just a woman fighting back. This wasn't just a normal lawyer handling a case. This was something else. Something bigger. Something dangerous. And as he sat there, staring at the documents in his hands, he finally understood. This wasn't going the way he planned. Not even close. This wasn't normal. Not at all. The truth didn't come all at once. It came slowly, piece by piece, like a puzzle being put together carefully. At first, she thought they were only working to prove her innocence. That was what she expected. That was what she asked for. Justice. But as the days passed, something felt different. The files kept growing. The documents became deeper, more detailed, more serious. One evening, she was called into Adrian Cole's office again. This time, the atmosphere was different. Not tense, but focused, deliberate. He stood by the window when she entered, his back to her, his hands in his pockets. The city lights reflected faintly on the glass. Sit, he said calmly. She did. There was a file on his desk, thicker than the others. Her name wasn't on it. Daniel's was. Her eyes stayed on it for a moment. Then Adrian turned and walked back to his desk. He didn't sit immediately. He looked at her first, carefully, like he was deciding something. Then he sat. Everything we've been working on, he began, his voice low and steady, is not just about your case. She frowned slightly. I don't understand, she said. He opened the file slowly. Inside were documents she had never seen before. Transactions, contracts, names, different accounts, different companies. None of them connected to her, but all connected to Daniel. Her heart started beating faster. What is this? She asked quietly. Adrian didn't rush his answer. Your ex, he said, is not just someone who made a false claim. He paused briefly. He is involved in something bigger. The words felt heavy. She leaned forward slightly. Bigger, how? He turned one of the pages and pushed it slightly toward her. Fraud, he said. Another page. illegal financial movement. Another, hidden partnerships under false names. Her hands moved slowly as she looked through the papers. Her eyes scanned the details. Dates, amounts, signatures, patterns. Everything was clear. Everything was real. Her breath caught slightly. This can't be him, she whispered. But deep down, she knew it was. Adrian watched her quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't explain too much. He let her see it for herself. That's not all, he added after a moment. She looked up at him. There are more records, he continued. More connections. People he's been working with. A small silence filled the room. Her mind tried to process everything at once. The cheating, the lies, the manipulation. And now, this. You knew, she said slowly. Not a question. A realization. His expression didn't change. Yes, he replied simply. Her eyes stayed on him. For how long, she asked. Another pause. Before he filed the claim against you. Her chest tightened slightly. You already knew he was doing all this? Yes. The answer was calm, direct, final. She leaned back in her chair, her thoughts racing. Then why, she started, then stopped. He didn't rush her. Why didn't you act? She finished quietly. Adrian folded his hands on the table. I don't act without a complete picture, he said. His voice remained steady, controlled. Your situation brought him closer to the surface. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, he continued, he made a mistake. A small pause. He moved too fast. She stared at him, trying to understand. He filed a claim he couldn't support, Adrian explained. He forced us to look deeper. Her breath slowed. And everything we found, she said quietly, was already there, he finished. Silence settled again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was clarity. He wasn't just helping her. He hadn't just started when she walked into his office and asked for justice. He had been watching long before, collecting information, building something, carefully, patiently. And her case was just the opening. You used this, she said slowly, to build a bigger case. He didn't deny it. Yes. There was no apology in his voice. No hesitation. Just truth. She looked down at the file again. At Daniel's name. At everything connected to him. And for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not just as the man who broke her heart, but as someone far more dangerous. Someone who had been hiding behind lies for a long time. And now, those lies were coming apart. Why are you telling me this? She asked after a moment. Adrian looked at her, his eyes steady. Because you're already involved. A small pause. And because you chose to fight. The words stayed with her. She closed the file slowly. Her hands no longer shaking. Her mind no longer confused. Everything was clear now. This was no longer just about her reputation. This was bigger. Much bigger. And Daniel had no idea what was coming. Because the moment he tried to destroy her, he exposed himself. And Adrian Cole had already been preparing for this long before she even asked for help. The courtroom was full again. But this time, the silence felt different. Heavier. Tighter. Like everyone already knew something serious was about to happen. She sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap. They were steady now. No shaking. No fear. Just focus. Across from her, Daniel sat beside his lawyer. But he didn't look the same anymore. His confidence was gone. His posture was stiff. His eyes moved more than before, like he was searching for something, anything, that could give him control again. But there was nothing, because this time, everything was ready. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Moments later, the case began. Daniel's lawyer spoke first. His voice was still formal, still controlled, but not as strong as before. He presented their argument again, repeated the same claims, that she owed Daniel money, that she had taken advantage of him, that she had caused damage. But as he spoke, something felt off. The words sounded weaker now, like they were already breaking. Then it was Adrian Cole's turn. He stood slowly, calm, collected, untouchable. The entire room seemed to settle the moment he rose. He didn't rush. didn't raise his voice. He simply walked forward and stood where everyone could see him clearly. Then he spoke. "Your Honor," he began, his tone low and precise. "This case is not what it appears to be." A small pause. He let the words settle. Then he continued. "What has been presented as a financial claim is, in fact, an attempt to hide a pattern of deception." The room grew quieter. Daniel shifted slightly in his seat. Adrian didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, he turned a page in his file. "Let us begin with the truth," he said. And then, he started. One by one. Carefully. Clearly. Every lie Daniel had told was brought into the light. Messages were presented. Dates aligned. Statements compared. Every contradiction exposed. Her support for him, proven. His false claims broken. The courtroom watched in silence as the story unfolded. Not the story Daniel told, but the real one. The truth. Her eyes remained forward. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to, because she could feel it. The shift. The tension. The change. Then Adrian moved to the next part. "Beyond the personal deception," he continued, "there is more." A pause. He finally turned slightly and looked at Daniel. For the first time, Daniel froze. "This individual," Adrian said calmly, "has engaged in activities that extend far beyond this courtroom." Documents were submitted. Financial records. Transaction histories. Hidden accounts. The judge leaned forward slightly, carefully reviewing. The room felt smaller, tighter, as each piece of evidence was placed down. Fraud. Illegal movement of funds. False identities used in transactions. Everything. Laid out. Clear. Undeniable. Daniel's lawyer tried to speak. Tried to interrupt. But his voice lacked strength. This is irrelevant," he started. "It is directly relevant," Adrian replied calmly, without raising his voice. Silence followed. Because everyone knew. He was right. The judge allowed it. And the truth continued. Witnesses were called. One by one. Their statements aligned perfectly. What Daniel had done. What he had said. What he had hidden. There were no gaps. No confusion. Everything matched. Everything made sense. Daniel's breathing became uneven. His hands tightened into fists. His eyes no longer steady. He looked at his lawyer. But even his lawyer didn't look confident anymore. The room could see it. Everyone could see it. The fall. Slow, but certain. Adrian stepped back slightly, giving space for the weight of the truth to settle. Then he spoke one final time. "This case was never about money," he said quietly. "It was about control." A small pause. About manipulation. Another pause. And about a man who believed he could rewrite the truth without consequence. The words landed heavily. No one moved. No one spoke. Because there was nothing left to say. Daniel's mask was gone. Completely. His confidence. His control. His lies. All gone. Exposed. He lowered his head slightly. Not in regret, but in defeat. Because for the first time, he had no way out. The judge began to speak. Formal. Clear. Final. The ruling followed. Claims dismissed. Further investigation ordered. Legal consequences set in motion. It was over. Not just the case, but everything Daniel had built on lies. And as the room slowly came back to life, whispers rising, people reacting, she remained still, calm, quiet, not smiling, not celebrating, just breathing. Because this wasn't victory in the way people expected. This was something deeper. She stood up slowly, and for a brief moment, her eyes met Daniel's. There was nothing left between them. No pain, no anger, no attachment, just distance, complete and final. Then she turned away and walked out of the courtroom, free, while behind her, everything Daniel tried to protect collapsed completely. The courtroom slowly emptied. People stood in small groups, whispering, talking about what had just happened. Some looked surprised, others impressed. A few simply shook their heads, still trying to understand how everything had turned so quickly. She didn't stay. She walked out quietly. No rush. No need to look back. The moment she stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter.
Free.
She stopped at the top of the steps and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, her chest didn't feel tight. Her mind wasn't racing. There was no fear sitting quietly inside her. Just calm. She closed her eyes for a second, letting the feeling settle. Then she opened them again. The world hadn't changed. The buildings were the same. The people passing by were the same. But she was different. Not the girl who stood in that courtroom days ago, shaking, unsure, and afraid. Not the girl who cried alone, questioning everything. Not the girl who trusted someone who broke her completely. That version of her was gone. She had faced everything. The betrayal, the lies, the humiliation. And she didn't run. She stood. And because of that, she was still standing now. Stronger, steadier.
Real.
Footsteps sounded behind her.
Calm.
Measured. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Adrian Cole. He stopped beside her. Not too close. Just enough to be present. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They both looked ahead. At the city. At the quiet movement of life continuing. Then he spoke. You handled it well. His voice was low, as always. Controlled. She gave a small nod. Thank you, she replied. A short silence followed. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt complete. After everything that had happened, there was nothing left that needed to be said loudly. She turned slightly and looked at him. Thank you for helping me, she added. Her voice was sincere, because she knew the truth. Without him, none of this would have happened. Adrian looked at her for a moment. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes held something different. Something quieter. You didn't win because of me, he said. She frowned slightly. He continued, you won because you chose to stand. The words were simple, but they hit deeply. She didn't respond immediately, because she understood what he meant. He gave her the tools, the strategy, the protection. But he didn't make the decision for her. She did. She chose not to stay silent. She chose not to break. She chose to fight. And that was the real victory. A small breath escaped her. Not heavy, not emotional, just steady. She gave a slight nod. I understand, she said softly. Adrian didn't say anything else. He simply stepped back slightly, as if giving her space, as if his role here was done. And maybe
it was.
She looked ahead again. The road in front of her felt open now. Not easy, but open. There were still things she needed to rebuild. Her name, her peace, her life. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it, because she knew something now that she didn't know before. She could survive anything. She could stand again. No matter what. She took a step forward. Then another. Her movements were calm. Confident. No hesitation. No doubt. She didn't look back at the building. She didn't look back at the past. Because there was nothing left there for her. As she walked away, the sunlight touched her face softly. And for the first time, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. Not because everything was perfect, but because she was okay. More than okay. She was free. And somewhere behind her, in a place that no longer mattered, Daniel was facing the consequences of everything he had done. His lies, his choices, his mistakes. He had thought losing her was freedom, a chance to move forward without responsibility, without consequence. But now, he understood. Too late. Because the woman he tried to destroy was the reason everything around him had fallen apart. And as she continued walking, stronger with every step, one truth remained clear. He thought losing me was his freedom, but it became the biggest mistake of his life.